Hi guys, it's Amy here, and today I bring you my top books of 2017 so far. So today I have 6 books to share with you, the creme de la creme of the books that I've read so far this year, the ones that have made the most lasting impression on me. Not all of them are 5 stars, but they're the ones that I looked at and was like, yes, that needs to be in my top books so far. So who knows, come the end of the year, hopefully these ones will still be in there. Who knows, they might be booted out by other fantastic books. We'll have to wait and see. But for now, let's jump into the books. The first 3 books I want to talk about I don't actually have copies of at the moment because they're all out with my friends. I tend to give out books that I really enjoy to my friends so that they can love them as well. So hopefully they're all having fantastic experiences with these 3 books that I want to share with you now. The first one is Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi. This one I have given to my boyfriend. I don't know if any of you guys recall the month that I read this book in and my wrap up at the end of the month, but this book had such a profound effect on me. It fully shook up me and my inner feelings about things, my inner kind of thoughts and the way that I kind of look at certain things, because it gave me this whole new perspective that I'd never even considered before. And I guess in part that was due to my own ignorance and my own kind of lack of knowledge on certain things, but also just through purely being in a different country. So let me tell you what this book is about. Basically, it's a non-fiction letter from Ta-Nehisi to his adolescent son. Ta-Nehisi is a 40-something-year-old black man, so very removed from my own life experience. Literally could not be further away from what I am. He lives in America, and this is a letter to his son on growing up being a black man in America, in the kind of neighbourhood that he lived in, and the experiences that he had with the police and people being murdered and various things like that, and it's his journey, and he shares that in such a frank and open way. It even shows his own prejudices and how he progresses throughout his life and how his thoughts towards other things change as well. And I just thought it was so brilliant for such a slim, I can't show you, but it's not a very big book. It really packed a punch, seriously packed a punch. I finished reading it and I could not sleep pretty much for the whole entire night. It took me so long to get to sleep because I had so many thoughts, all these new thoughts that I'd never had in my brain before, and it was so overwhelming, but in such a good way. It made me want to go and open my horizons and understand other people's perspectives on things. I just feel so pumped talking about it now because it was such and is such a thing that has affected my life and made me really want to consider other people, and that just for me is the sign of a fantastic book. And I know that effect will last with me forever, and if I read that book again, I'm just going to take so many different things from it. So yes, I think you should all go and read it. The next book I have to talk about is another non-fiction book, and that is When Breath Becomes Air by Kalanithi. I mentioned this one in my mid-year book tag because it is the best book that I've read so far this year. I've got shivers just thinking about this book. It again was another book that just hugely impacted me at the time that I read it, and since then I've thought of it numerous times. Whenever I see it in bookshops, I want to grab it and give it to everyone I see there and just tell them to go and read it, because it is a phenomenal book. So if you don't know, this book is Paul Kalanithi. Paul Kalanithi was a neurosurgeon and a neuroscientist. He was then diagnosed with terminal lung cancer and he died, and so he in this book is going from being the doctor in the know, the guy in charge, to being the patient who is being treated, who knows so well the kind of ins and outs of what is going on inside his body, that he knows he's not going to survive and he can't kind of kid himself basically. And I think what sets this book apart from others of its kind is the fact that not only was he a neurosurgeon, not only did he understand the kind of medical side of all this, but before he decided to go into medicine and start studying that, he actually studied English literature and language, and he was a huge bookworm, a huge lover of words, just like you and me. And so that, I think, whilst I was reading it, felt like I connected so much more to him as a person, because there was this similar thing that we had going on. And so because he had this level of understanding of what makes a good story and how to tell a story, the writing in this book is just unbelievably good. Like, the actual telling of his story, of his death, is astounding. It was amazing. The second part of the book is written by his wife after he dies, and her section is equally as well written. Like, I was blown away purely by the writing. It was just so encapsulating. You felt like you were living their lives, and it was such a tragedy. This is a book that I cried so much. Like, I had to keep putting it down because I was crying so much I couldn't actually read the words on the page. That is how much it, like, hit me in the heart. So yes, I think this book is an incredibly important one to read, and I think everyone should read it. But if you are anyway inclined to be affected by these kind of things, like, quite deeply, it's definitely one that you want to pick at the right time to read, because it could really, like, affect you. Moving on to fiction, the first one I want to talk about is Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. Again, this was another one that really just took me out of my own comfort zone, my own life, my own experiences, and put me somewhere which I would never have even considered or thought about, or never had really learnt about before reading this book. So this one starts at the very end of the 1700s, and it goes all the way through the years up until present day. It's based in and around the history of the slave trade, and the first two chapters follow two sisters who never meet each other. One of these sisters gets married to the white man who is in charge of the slave movement and the slave kind of trade in the area of Africa that she lives in. So she is kind of elevated from the kind of village life up into this kind of very kind of, she just doesn't know where she belongs really, because she's not fitting in with the white people very much, but also she's above now the people that she was living with prior to that. And the other sister is in another village, and she is actually captured by the people who are running the slave trade, and she gets put into slavery. Those first two chapters are the only chapters that we spend with those two sisters, and then after that each chapter goes down a generation after these two women, and we follow their whole family right up until present day. I have never read a book that tells a story in that way. I was really impressed by that, and how the author made you feel so connected to these people, even though each chapter you were experiencing a whole new character. I really enjoyed at the beginning of each chapter working out how this character was related to the generation before, and where they come into the story. I think this book is not only a fantastic story, it's told brilliantly and beautifully, the writing is fantastic, but also it's so educational for someone who felt like they didn't really learn a lot about the slave trade in school and things. This one was one that really spurred me to want to read more into this. But alongside that, we also have so much stuff which is relevant to us today in our world, and especially in America, with black people living in America now. There were sections of this book which you could very much read as present day America, I believe, especially in comparison to what I've read in Between the World and Me, because it seems like stories that Ta-Nehisi was sharing in Between the World and Me could very much have been put in Homegoing, but way back in like years and years and years ago, and it was like same things happening over and over again, this like police brutality towards black people, and it's just like an ongoing problem which obviously it still needs to be addressed today, and that has obviously so much more relevant in the last few years, and has become so much more seen in the world media and online, and in discussions that we all have here in the world, and I love that, and I love that I've read those two books and made that connection, and it's made like my thinkings on the whole subject like so much more rich, and made me want to go and look into it all so much more. So again, obviously because it's in this video, I really think you guys should go and read that book. It is fantastic. Next we have a YA book, which you guys probably aren't going to be surprised to see because I've mentioned it a few times, and actually it's the best YA book that I've read in recent years, I'd say, and that is The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. I've been reading Patrick Ness books since I was a very, very young girl. Like, I remember picking up the Chaos Walking trilogy like a very long time ago, and so Patrick Ness is someone who's like very close to my heart, and this book was just, it ticked so many things for me, and I think it's so relevant as well. Like, he really writes his characters in such a fantastic way. So basically this book follows the regular people. So, you know, in the generic superhero films, the action movies, you've got your superhero and then you've got the sidekicks. So this is about the sidekicks, the regular people, the people who don't usually get to stand in the limelight. At the beginning of each chapter there is a small like paragraph just letting you know what is going on with the superheroes in the story, so you've got that in the back of your head, like you know what is going on over there with the superheroes. But then the bulk of the story is these main characters who are just trying to get on with their lives whilst all this craziness is going on with the superheroes. So there's zombies, there's like apocalypse type stuff happening, but it's all over there on the peripheral, and we're just focusing on the like everyday day-to-day life of these young like teenagers. We follow the life of a young boy named Mikey who is leading up to graduation, and he is just trying to get through these last few months up until graduation without anything crazy happening. There's small sprinklings of really well written romance in here. There's LGBTQ characters, there's the characters who have eating disorders, and OCD is really brilliantly discussed in this book. And all of that comes to, I mean, that sounds like a lot to cram into one story, but it's just written so well. You don't think, oh, like, right, another kind of plot device here that they're just like throwing in another like thing to talk about. But actually, it's just done really fantastically. Patrick Ness perfectly balances humour with extremely serious topics, which I imagine in a lot of books would be very hard going to read and quite upsetting to read. But in this, he just makes it so accessible, and he just tells a fantastic story. So yes, I would highly recommend this one. Next is another one from an author which you probably won't be surprised to hear in this video, and that is My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. I really do hope to go and see this one in the cinema. I'm saying it and I keep saying it, and I don't know, I'm just so rubbish at going to the cinema. But anyway, this book, Daphne du Maurier, she's definitely getting up there with being one of my favourite authors now that I'm reading more and more from her. All of her books have been 4- and 5-star reads for me. I love this one, it was a 5-star. So this one follows the story of a man named Philip who is left in charge of the stately home of his cousin Ambrose, whilst Ambrose goes away and travels around Italy. The relationship between Ambrose and Philip is extremely strong. It's like father and son basically, because Philip was orphaned and Ambrose took him in. So to Philip, saying goodbye to Ambrose whilst he goes away each winter to enjoy the Italian sun is like a big deal. And he very much looks forward to the time when Ambrose returns from his holidays to enjoy life with him again in the Cornish countryside. But then on one of these trips, Philip receives a letter from Ambrose to say that he has married a lady named Rachel, and that he will be bringing her back with her this time, and that they will all be living together in the stately home. But when Philip starts receiving very strange and disturbing letters from Ambrose which suggests that Ambrose is in distress in Italy, and actually maybe this relationship that he's got into is not the positive thing that he thought it was, Philip starts getting very worried. He takes himself off to Italy to try and find Ambrose and work out what the hell is going on, and when he gets there he discovers that Ambrose is dead. Bum bum bum. It's incredibly dark, incredibly rich, delicious, and just like the story is so gripping, and not a lot happens. It's not like an action-packed book, but the words are so gothic and beautiful, and it really pulls you in, and you just don't know what's gonna happen. Come the end, you just feel like you've experienced this really like dark and eerie thing, and it's such a atmospheric book that I loved it, guys. It was so good. If you're a fan of du Maurier and you haven't read this one yet, I would highly recommend it. The final book that I want to talk about is actually the only 4-star book that I have to share with you today, but it's one that when I was looking over and when I was making this list, I just couldn't ignore it, because although it wasn't a 5-star, I feel like the experience I had with it was like a 5-star experience, if you get what does that, like, it was like an amazing experience, and I haven't been able to like forget about it since I read it. So anyway, it's Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I don't know whether it's because of the length of the story and the time I spent with these characters, or the fact that this book really took me by surprise. Like, I didn't expect to have the experience that I did with it and the enjoyment that I took from it. But even still, it is without a doubt one of the best books that I've read so far this year, even though I didn't give it like a full 5 stars. In this one, we follow a group of Russian aristocracy as they go about their daily drama. There's romance, adultery, like Russian politics, tragedy. There's just so much in this book that happens that I don't even think I can fully like encapsulate it all in one short little sentence. Characters in this are so endearing and lovable, and I just, like, I looked forward to diving back into this book because I wanted to spend more time with these characters. I think that's a sign of a good book. What I think blew me away the most about this book was how accessible it was, and how, although it is a huge book, I expected it to be a very difficult read, just, I don't know, because it's in translation, it's like a classic and it's huge, like, but it was so easy to read. Like, it is just a long book. One thing I would say though is that there are a lot of characters and they have somewhat similar names sometimes, and because they're like Russian, they have like shortened sections of their names, or like slightly, like they have like nicknames, and so to keep track of all those ones, like, you do need to keep reading the book. Like, if you put it down and then forget about it for a while, it's not going to be much use because you will forget who all the characters are. The men in this were so open to their emotions, like they didn't hide anything, they didn't like pull anything back, like, which I feel is like somewhat unusual in classics anyway, because I feel like they quite often have this bravado about them. Like, the men don't often know what's going on with women's feelings, or they don't really, like, you know, have a care, or they don't understand until the woman has to say to them, like, come on mate, like, what are you doing, you know? I'm thinking things like Pride and Prejudice, you know, Mr. Darcy, he doesn't have a flipping clue half the time, but the men in this book were very in tune with their emotions, I guess. But then on the flip side of that, the women in this book were also fantastically written, because they weren't made out to be like these airheaded women who, you know, were just there for the money and looking nice in the, like, Russian courts and stuff. They genuinely had all their own, like, deceptions and nasty streaks and these different things about them, which made them so much more 3D, you know, it made them seem more realistic and real, and I really like that. So that was the last book I wanted to share with you today. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Let me know what books you have loved so far this year. What are your top books of the year? I'd love to hear. Have you read any of these? What did you think of them? I'd love to know down below. As always, I will leave links to Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, everything I've mentioned today down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I will see you soon. Bye!